Good morning. It's good to see you here this morning. We have several visitors. It's good to have you here. You want to turn number 134. Number 134. Faith is the victory. We'll sing this song and then we'll have our scripture reading. Number 134. Encamped along the hills of light, ye Christian soldiers rise, and press the battle ere the night shall fill the glowing skies. Against the broken veils below, let all our strength be heard. Faith is the victory we know, that overcomes the world. Faith is the victory. Faith is the faith in like a whirlwind's breath swept on o'er everything. The faith by which they conquered death is still our shining shield. Faith is the victory. Faith is the victory. Glorious victory that overcomes the world. On every hand the glowing light, drawn up in thread of rain. Let tears of ease be left behind, and onward to the grave. Salvation's helm and on each head, with fruit of earth about. The earth shall tremble beneath our tread, and echo with our shout. Faith is the victory. Faith is the victory. Oh, glorious victory that overcomes the world. To him who overcomes the foe, wide greater shall he live. Before the angels he shall know his name confessed in heaven. Then onward from the hills of light, our voice with love acclaim. Will vanquish all the foes of night in Jesus' conquering name. Faith is the victory. Faith is the victory. Oh, glorious victory that overcomes the world.
Scripture reading today is from 1 Peter chapter 2, starting at verse 13. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 13. Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme, or to the governors as unto them that are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of them that do well. For so is the will of God, that with well doing you may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men, as free, and not using your liberty as a cloak of maliciousness, but as the servants of God. Honor all men, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. Servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the forward. For this is thankworthy, if a man, for conscience toward God, endure grief and suffering wrongfully. For what glory is it, if when you are buffeted for your faults, you should take it patiently? But if, when you do well and suffer for it, you take it patiently, this is acceptable with God. For even hereunto were ye called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example, that you should follow his steps, who did no sin, yet was gall found in his mouth. Who, when he was reviled not again. When he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judgeth righteously, who his own will self bare out sins in his own body on the tree, that we, being dead to sin, should live in righteousness, by whose stripes you are healed. For you were a sheep going astray, but are now returned to the shepherd and bishop of your souls.
Our song before our prayer will be number 136. Number 136. Faith of our fathers. Faith of our fathers.
Dear Heavenly Father, we ask that everything that's done here this morning will be well pleasing in your sight and will do much good for your kingdom. Heavenly Father, we also ask that you would speak of the hour and give us good recollection of the message you have prepared for us, that we are ready to listen and receive and hear your word. Heavenly Father, we ask you to be with us in this hour. Give us our many sins. In Christ's name we pray.
Our next song is number 267. Number 267. I believe in Jesus. Number 267. I believe in the one name of Jesus. I believe I believe that he walked on the water, and I believe that he's the answer for me. Yes, I believe in the one name called Jesus. I believe he died on Mount Calvary, and I believe that the tomb was found empty, and I believe that he's the answer for me. I believe in the words of the Bible, how he made the poor blind man to see. I believe that the dead were alive, and I believe he's made a difference in me. Yes, I believe in the one name called Jesus. I believe he died on Mount Calvary, and I believe that the tomb was found empty, and I believe that he's the answer for me. I believe that he spoke to their last us, and he said, "Come, blind and set free." I believe that he reigns up in heaven, and I believe that he is coming again. Yes, I believe in the one name called Jesus. I believe he died on Mount Calvary, and I believe that the tomb was found empty, and I believe that he's the answer for me. Our next song is number 291. 291. I know not why God wonders prayer. Number 291. I know not why God's wondrous grace to me he hath made known, nor why unto Him against that day. I know not how the Spirit moves, convincing men of sin. Revealing Jesus through the Word, creating faith in Him. But I know whom I have believed and am persuaded that He is able to keep that which I committed unto Him against that day. I know not what a good Lord may be reserved for me. Oh, weary ways or golden days before His face I see. But I know whom I have believed and am persuaded that He is able to keep that which I committed unto Him against that day. I know not when my Lord may come at night or noonday fair, nor if I walk the hill with Him, or be hid in the air. But I know whom I have believed and am persuaded that He is able to keep that which I committed unto Him against that day. The next song is number 500. Sorry. This sounds like Mark number 557. We use that as an invitation song. Mark 557. Rock of Ages. We use that song after the lesson. And the song before the lesson will be number 462. Number 462. Oh, for faith that will not fail. Don't stand and sing as you may. Number 462. Oh, for a faith that will not shrink, though pressed by every foe, that will not tremble on the brink of any earthly woe, that will not murmur or complain beneath the chasing rod, but in the hour of grief or pain will lean upon His rod. A faith that shines more bright and clear in simplest grace that with dangers knows no fear, in darkness sails no doubt. Lord, give us such a faith as this, and in whatever may come, we'll take
welcome you this morning. Appreciate your presence. We do have guests. Thank you for your presence. Good to have our regulars with us as well. Good to be able to get together and think about God, eternity, and things that are most important in life. I want to think about belief for just a few minutes this morning. What do you believe? Do you believe in Jesus? You know, in John 12 and verse 37 it said, "But though he had done so many miracles before them, yet they believed not on him." John, the book of John, is a great book about belief. That's probably the theme of what John is written about. And a lot of the things that John talks about is the belief or the lack of belief on the part of those who came into contact with Jesus and how they reacted to him. You know, John 20, 30, and 31 says, and many other signs that he did do in the midst of his disciples that are not written in this book, but these are written that ye may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and in believing ye might have life through his name. So we'll think about believing this morning and why so many people who had direct contact with Jesus Christ himself and saw all the miracles and heard his word, yet they failed to believe that Jesus was the Son of God. You know, there are reasons that people don't believe, and there are reasons why back then they happened, and they still are a part of the life in the minds of us today, and those that come in contact with the Word of God and come in contact with the knowledge of Jesus, to where they don't accept that Jesus is someone that they should believe in and have a means by which that believing produces a faith that is active in their lives. The first thing that I think of, or that we want to know, and why people fail to believe in Jesus and have a saving faith, is that they focus on things that are physical as opposed to things which are spiritual. In John the 6th chapter, verse 14 and 15, it says, "Then those men, when they had seen the miracle that Jesus did, said, This is of a truth that prophet that should come into the world. And when Jesus therefore perceived that they would come and take him by force to make him a king, he departed again into a mountain, himself alone." Here we have Jesus doing a miracle in John chapter 6. Actually, it's the miracle where Jesus had fed the 5,000. They had 2 loaves and 5 fishes, and he took and fed 5,000 people with that little bit. Those people right there that were with Jesus said, "Wow, look at what this man has done. He has to be the prophet that was prophesied in the Old Testament. He has to be the one, the Messiah, the one that was to come." But rather than sitting down and listening to what Jesus was proposing that was going to happen as far as the spiritual kingdom and submitting to him spiritually and becoming a child of God, as he was going to, repenting of their sins and becoming a child of God, as he was going to promote in his teachings, they decided that they wanted to get the benefits of Jesus in a physical way. They wanted to have the benefits of being a power within that particular area, having Jesus as their leader there. And so they failed to see Jesus as the spiritual person that he was, with the spiritual message that he had, so that they become spiritual people that they were supposed to be. You know, and that's the first thing. They had a life to focus on what was truly important. And the same is true today in our world. You know, even those who are the closest to Jesus fail to see what is really about it, and that takes into account those of us today. Think about John 4:31 through 34, where Jesus was there at the well, and his disciples had gone off to get food because they didn't have any. And when they came back, he had been teaching the Samaritan woman by the well there. And he said to them, "I have a meat to eat that ye know not of." Therefore said the disciples unto one another, "Hath any man brought him aught to eat?" Jesus saith unto them, "My meat is to do the will of him that sent me, and to finish his work." Jesus knew what his mission on, or his purpose in coming to this earth was. It was to do the will of the Father, to reach out to people, to teach them the things that were necessary to become spiritual people so that they could live eternally. His disciples, right in the midst of what was going on with Christ, couldn't see that. Every time Jesus would say something, they would take it and make a physical thing about it. Even the matter of eating and anything that they did, it was a physical thing to them. And Jesus had to go back over and over and over again and explain to them, this is not it. You've got to get the spiritual message out of what I'm trying to say here. The spiritual message is what it's about. The Spirit is what is important. Jesus said, labor not for the meat which perisheth, but for that meat which endureth unto everlasting life, which the Son of Man shall give you. For him hath God the Father seen. Jesus said you've got to be paying attention to those things which are spiritual in nature. Well, what are the people looking at today? You know, they want to be sure that things are okay in this life and everything's taken care of. You got to have a good job. You got to make plenty of money. You got to take care of yourself physically. You got to have the rest and relaxation that is necessary so that you can function in life. You want to build up the relationship and have a good time. That's the things that people think are the most important in this life. But Jesus didn't focus on that. That's not what the Bible tells us. Jesus said in Matthew 16:24 that the most important thing that we have is our soul. Our spiritual being. That's what's important. He established the church, and the people were summoned into it in Acts chapter 2 because it said that in the church is where the people are going to be saved. That's where the soul is secure within the church. John said in 8 verse 32 that it's the truth that sets us free. So we can think about all these things and focus our lives on things that are going on around us. But you know, when it ultimately comes down to it, if we're not focusing on the things that are spiritual in nature, we're going to miss the boat. And how sad that would be if we would miss the things that are eternal in nature because we're so focused on those things which are temporary in nature. Let's be focused on the right things. Secondly, when I think about why those people failed to believe in Jesus Christ was because they were cowards. They were afraid. And you can see this in John chapter 9. John chapter 9, we have the account where Jesus healed the blind man who had been blind from life, from the beginning of his life. And he healed him. And so everybody that was around it, that they were in a big commotion because they recognized him as the man who had been blind, and so they didn't know what happened. And he said, you know, this man Jesus has made me whole. And so they draw the man in, they have a big meeting, and the Pharisees are there, and everybody's carrying on about, you know, how this happened. And so, you know, the Pharisees, they ask his parents, they says, who is it? How did he get healed? They said, you know, I don't know. Ask him. He's of an age. But this is why they said that. John 9:20 says that his parents answered them and said, we know that this is our son and that he was born blind, but what means now he saith we know not. Or who hath opened his eyes we know not. He is of age, ask him. He shall speak for himself. And then it says this in verse 22. These words spake his parents because they feared the Jews. For the Jews had agreed already that if any man did confess that he was Christ, he should be put out of the synagogue. Those people were afraid to say anything about what the truth of the matter was. You know, in John chapter 7, it says in verse 13, howbeit no man spake openly of him for fear of the Jews. The people in power made it so that everybody could not talk openly about the Christ. You know, but we don't have that problem today. If I were to ask in this room, how many people of you are afraid to say things because of what somebody might say or do? There's not anybody in here that's that way. We don't have that same fear today. We're not afraid of, being laughed at or scorned because of something we might think, say, or believe. You know, we're not afraid of being left out or ostracized by people because of a stand we might take. You know, we're not afraid of being falsely accused of something because we stand for the truth. That's not a part of us anymore. We're not afraid anymore, are we? You know I'm being facetious here. You know I'm being sarcastic because throughout life, mankind has always had fear. Some are more elaborate or unfounded fears, but everybody has fear. And to say that, I'm not afraid of losing a friend because I believe in Jesus. There are people that make decisions in their life because they're afraid of what's going to happen if they believe in Jesus and take a stand for Jesus. That's just as true today as it was back then. When we think about it, if we deny it, we are denying the truth to ourselves, and we're not being honest with ourselves. Jesus said this in Matthew 10:28. Fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Jesus Christ recognized that every human being on this planet has the fear in him of something. We can't deny it. It's a part of us. But we have to have an appropriate fear in our lives. We have to fear the correct things in our lives. And we can't let it stop us from being what we need to be. So many people back in the day of Jesus allowed that fear of others to drive them away from responding what they exactly knew to be the truth. What else makes people not believe in Jesus? John 5 and verse 42 says, But I know you, that you have not the love of God in you. Jesus looked at people and said, You don't have the love of God in you. But they had a love. They had a love for something other than God. And so we see that people fail to believe in God because they have a misplaced love or affection for certain things. What is it in your life that you love? What is it in your life that you care about more than anything else? John 12, verse 42 and 43 says, Nevertheless, among the chief rulers also many believed on him, but because of the Pharisees they did not confess him, lest they should be put out of the synagogue, for they loved the praise of men more than the praise of God. God looks into your heart. He knows what is there. He knows where your affection is and what your love is for. These people recognized the truth about Jesus. They knew, based upon the evidence, what he was and who he was, as the Son of God. But yet, the idea of not having this relationship with those people in the synagogue was more important to them than being a disciple of Christ and acknowledging him to be the Son of God. There are people throughout the world today who know that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, based upon the evidence in the Bible, based upon their rational reason, but they don't allow that belief to dictate how they live their lives because they want to have the relationship with the people of this world as opposed to the relationship with God and with Jesus Christ. 1 John 2:15 says, Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. We have to make a determination on what is the most important thing in our lives, where we're going to put our affections and our love. Jesus in Matthew 22:37 said, Jesus, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. Important in that passage of Scripture that we need to look at, it says all. We can't just give him a part of our affection. You know, what happens is when we have an affection for something that's in the world, it blinds us to a true love or belief in Jesus Christ. We don't pay attention to what produces faith because we're paying more attention to where our affection truly is. Many people today, many people back then, would not believe in Jesus Christ because they were blinded by prejudice. There's a lot of talk about prejudice today in our world. Basically talking about prejudice based on skin color and things like that. But there are a lot of different things that produce prejudice, just a prejudging in people's lives, more than just the physical makeup of people. People were prejudiced against Christ not because of his color of skin, because he was a Jew just like everybody else in that particular time that he was dealing with. So that wasn't the problem. But they were prejudiced. In John chapter 9, where Jesus healed that blind man, it says that they brought that blind man before the Pharisees. In verse 14 it says, And it was the Sabbath day when Jesus had made the clay and opened his eyes. Then again the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He said, He put clay upon mine eyes, and I washed, and do see. Therefore said some of the Pharisees, This man is not of God, because he keepeth not the Sabbath. Others said, How can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? And there was a division among them. They looked at Jesus, and they saw what he was doing. And rather than seeing the good that he had done, the power that was displaying the fact that he had to be from God or God himself, and they looked at what? the Sabbath day. What was the most important day to the Jews? The Sabbath day. And so, rather than looking at the evidence that was laid out before them, they prejudiced their hearts and minds against Jesus Christ because of what they thought about the Sabbath day. In Mark 3, Jesus healed a man with a withered hand. And it says in verse 2 that they watched him whether he would heal on the Sabbath day that they might accuse him. They went about and made such a situation to where they were so prejudiced against him that they were going to use that particular aspect of the Jewish religion to overlook the fact that what he was teaching about himself and about God was not important to them. They were holding on to something in their lives so important that they couldn't let go of it. They were blinded by their prejudice towards him. And we look at verse 6, it says, because of what he did and because of their attitude of prejudice towards him, that straightway they took counsel with the Herodians against him, how they might destroy him. Prejudice is a very strong feeling. When we have something that we so hold on to in our lives that we totally disregard the truth, we're not going to let go of it. And we'll fight tooth and nail to hold on down to the point where we'll do things that are beyond what is really reasonable. We see how wickedness and prejudice affects people in doing some horrible things in this life. But it also can help affect those of us who are religious in nature, who have a heart that wants to do the right thing, if we're not careful. Jesus said this in Matthew 12 and verse 6, but I say unto you, that in this place is one greater than the temple. But if ye had known what this meaneth, I will have mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath day. Their prejudice so closed their minds to who Jesus was. They're holding on to their beliefs in the Jewish religion so closed their minds that they could not see and believe who Jesus was. And therefore, their religion was destroyed, and eventually their lives were destroyed as well. Well, how do we see prejudice in the world today? I guess we could first of all start and point the finger at those people who are in the denominational world. They're so caught up in the things that they're practicing in religion many times that they will not look at the Bible honestly and say, this is what we're doing. This is what the Bible teaches. And so I'm going to change my life. They're prejudiced towards whatever their faith is or whatever their practice is, so much so that they can't believe what Jesus teaches through His Word. But we can look at people who are not in religion, people who are humans who think the highest order is man and the things of mankind are the way to live your life. And they're prejudiced against the religious people of the world, especially of Christianity. Jesus said in Matthew 13:15, for this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them. Prejudiced people are people who have their minds closed so that they cannot be convinced of any other thing. People who are prejudiced are people who base what they do in life on evidence that is in their hearts and minds rather than something that is outside their heart and mind. The fifth thing that I found that is a hindrance to why people would not believe in Jesus Christ was intellectual pride. Intellectual pride, thinking that you're too smart or so smart that you don't really need the truth or Jesus. In Acts 17 and verse 18, we have Paul on the mount in Athens talking to those wise people, the most intellectual people of their time. It says in verse 18 that certain philosophers of the Epicureans and the Stoics encountered him. And some said, we will hear what will this babbler say. Others some, he seemed to be a setter forth of strange gods, but he preached of them Jesus and the resurrection. Paul talked about Jesus. Here we had the most intellectual people in the world at the time. What do they call in Christianity? This idea of resurrection and living eternally. Nothing but a battle. Nothing that is of importance, just another idea to be talked about or thought about. And that's what it is a lot of times when we think about our intellectual pride. How smart we are. Are we too smart to be believers in Christ to the point where it makes us do things that we would not, by choice, do on a regular basis? Looking again at John chapter 9, where he healed the blind man, it says, Then they reviled him and said, Thou art his disciple, but we are Moses' disciples. This is the Pharisees talking to the man who was healed. We know that God spake unto Moses, for this fellow we know not from whence he is. Speaking of Jesus, they didn't know where he was from, or at least that's what they proclaimed to be. The man answered and said to them, Why? Hearing is a marvelous thing, that ye know not from whence he is, and yet he hath opened my eyes. Disregarding the facts of what had happened, they had closed their mind to Jesus Christ. And now we know that God heareth not sinners, but if any man be a worshiper of God and doeth his will, him he heareth. Since the world began, was not it heard that any man had opened the eyes of one that had been born blind? If this man were not of God, he could do nothing. They answered and said unto him, Thou wast altogether born in sins, and dost thou teach us? And they cast him out. Here this was, a man who was not a man of means of education. He had been born blind. He didn't have the ability to read or to understand and to grasp all the information of these Pharisees who were very intellectual. And he's having a discussion with them. And he says, common sense tells you what's going on here. You can reason it out for yourself. And yet they were so stuck up in their hearts and minds that they thought that they had everything figured out, that they couldn't reason it out for themselves and look at what the evidence portrayed for them. When you look at the life that we live today, intellectual pride is abound. There's the intellectual elite who think that they know so much that they don't need religion and don't need Christianity. But we can be confident of what God says in 1 Corinthians, where he says, For ye see your calling, brethren, how that not many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called. God has made it so simple for people to believe and to obey Jesus Christ. But yet, people who are on the upper echelon, who think they are people of means or intellect or whatever it may be, they can't see past what they have in life to come to what the truth is. But then on the opposite extreme, there are those who are going to fail to believe in Jesus Christ because of ignorance. In John 7:40 it says, Many of the people therefore, when they heard this saying, said, Of a truth, this is the prophet. Others said, This is the Christ. And some said, Shall Christ come out of Galilee? Hath not the Scripture said that Christ cometh of the seed of David out of the town of Bethlehem, where David was? So there was a division among the people because of him. The Scriptures were very clear. One of the prophecies of the Old Testament was that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. And as these people looked around and saw Jesus Christ, Jesus was of Nazareth. That was his hometown. That's where he grew up. And so as Jesus was to go around and to teach these people and to try to call them to God, the leadership, the people who were the religious people of that day, look at him and says, This is Jesus of Nazareth. No way, no how can this be the Messiah. No how, no way can this be the Christ. He is from the wrong place. Look what the Scriptures say. But yet these people who were so smart in the Scriptures were ignorant of the truth. They failed to dig deep enough to find out what the truth was. And that's what happens with people so many times. They don't dig deep enough to find the truth. They settle for just a superficial level of the knowledge of the Bible, and that's the end of it. And so they don't get down to the point where they receive or acquire the belief that is necessary for a person to be saved. You know, many today read the Bible or don't read the Bible and study the Bible, and so Christ has no way of being in their lives. You know, they don't take the time to evaluate the evidence, and so they are assuming rather than knowing what the truth is of about what they believe in life. We don't want to be that way. In Acts the 17th chapter, it talks about those in Berea, how that they were more noble than those in Thessalonica, because they, with the readiness of mind, searched the Scriptures daily to see that those things were so. Do you believe in Jesus Christ? Is it a moving belief? I guess would be the best question. Those people, as we read and looked at in so many areas, believed that Jesus was the Son of God. But yet it was not a moving belief. If we go and we look at James chapter 2 and verse number 19, it says there, you believe there is one God, ye do well. The devils believe also. We need to understand that it's more than just believing in the sense of knowing in your mind who Jesus is, but it has to be a belief that will cause one to move. We know the devils won't be saved, but yet they have a belief. Do you believe in Jesus today? Is a belief that will cause you to do what Jesus says. Because that's what it boils down to. If it's not a belief that will cause you to move, then you're no better off than the devils themselves. What stands in your way and what stands in my way of being the kind of people we need to be in believing that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and doing what He says to do? If you believe in Jesus Christ in the right and proper way, you're not going to be hindered by the things that we talk about, but you're going to be moved to do the things that Jesus, the Son of God, has said to do. If you're not a Christian, and that means that you'll do what Jesus said to do to become a child of God. Jesus said, except you repent, ye shall all likewise perish. Luke 13 and verse 3. It means you've got to change your life. You've got to make your life right with what Jesus commands us to do. Jesus said in Matthew 10 that if you confess me before men, I will confess you before my Father which is in heaven. It's a requirement of Jesus to be able, or to do that, to confess Jesus. We have the example of the Ethiopian eunuch when it comes to what Jesus says to do, and his example of doing exactly what he was instructed to do. And then Matthew 16, Jesus said, he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. If you believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and you want to be saved, then you will act upon what Jesus said to do in following the commandments to be baptized. But we also have to live a faithful Christian life. Jesus set the example of faithfulness to His Father in this life and failed and didn't fail at all. We're weak and sinful. We're not like Christ in that respect. We're never going to be perfect if we're going to fail. But we want to live a life that is like Jesus in that we're doing our very best to please the Father. And when we fail, we will amend or make amends for those mistakes by repenting of those sins and confessing them. And then praying God for forgiveness. Those are the things that people do when they believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. This morning, do you believe there is something standing in your way so that you only are acknowledging Jesus Christ? If you believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and you haven't done what is necessary in order for you to be a disciple of His, I want to encourage you this morning to do what you need to do while together we stand.
Congregations, clap for me. Let me Lord myself in thee. Let the Lord and the love from thy side which flow be of sin the double good. Cleanse me from its guilt and part, from the labor of my hands, and fulfill the law 764. When we meet and speak to you. Number 764. When we meet in sweet communion, when in bondage spread, hearts are brought in closer union, while partaking of the bread. Precious peace, all else surpassing, wondrous love for you and me. While we meet Christ gently whispers, to this same kindness agree. God so loved what wondrous treasure, love and gave the best of heaven. Bought us with that matchless treasure. Yea, for us His life was given. Precious peace, all else surpassing, wondrous love for you and me. While we meet Christ gently whispers, to this same heaven glory. Peace divine, all else surpassing, precious blood for you and me. While we saw Christ gently whispers, this same glory. Precious peace, all else surpassing, wondrous love for you and me. While we meet Christ gently whispers, this same kindness glory.
Our Father in heaven, we come for you now, gather around your table. Thank you, Father, for your Son, his life, his example, and most importantly, Father, for his death on the cross. We ask you now to be with us as we take this bread, which represents his body that was broken on the cross for our sins, and we remember what it means to us as Christians that we partake of it and welcome you in Christ's name.
Heavenly Father, we're thankful for another chance we can come together and worship. Bishop, please be with us as we're about to give up our needs and help us to give cheerfully.
Thanks for being here this morning. Hope to see you again tonight for our evening service at 6 p.m. A few announcements before we dismiss this morning. I want to mention those that are on our prayer list. It is great to see Brother John with us this morning. Continue to pray for Sister Dot and her ailments. We want to continue to pray for Nancy Meacham and Evelyn Mitchell, Cherie Atkins, and Ronnie Martin, Martin's mother.com. Melvin Craig, who's been battling leukemia, and Paul Brown and June Hicks. We also want to pray for Leanne Duke, Carrie Duke's wife, who had that very bad diagnosis several months ago, but I believe it's doing better. Tim Miller, who's undergoing treatment for cancer, and then also Wayne Ellis, who was diagnosed with terminal cancer. That's Sister Evelyn Martin's brother. We have a couple additions to our prayer list. Paxton Vickers is home sick today with a fever, and then also Rachel Dixon is home sick this morning as well. So we want to remember those in our prayers. For our upcoming events, we have the men's business meeting today at 5 p.m. We encourage all the men of the congregation to be in attendance of that. We're continuing our canned food drive through this month. There are a couple crates in the back if you'd like to bring non-perishable food items to give to a family in need. And then we're planning on having a pizza and pie night on Wednesday the 22nd. That's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, just to get together with fellowship. We'll eat pizza before service at 5:45, and then we'll have pie desserts after service, and people like to stick around for that. We'll have our fellowship meal and adjust service times for this month on the 26th, and we encourage everyone to stay and have fellowship that day with us as well. Our internalization verse for this week comes from the book of John, chapter 20, and verse 31. But these things are written that ye might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and believing ye might have life through his name. Again, that's John 20 and verse 31. If you have any other announcements, or if there's anything that need to add or change, please see me after service, and I'll be happy to announce it.
Closing song number 400. Number 400, Living by Faith. I'd like to stand and sing tonight. Just don't take too long. Number 400. Let's all sing first and last verse. I care not today what the morrow may bring, if shadow or sunshine or rain. The Lord I know through everything, and all my worry is saved. Living by faith, living by faith, in Jesus above, trusting the Father, in His great love, from all shame, sheltering I'm living by faith. I'm living by faith and feel no I know that He safely will carry me through, no matter what equals betide. Why should I think careful the tempest may blow, if Jesus calls close to my side? Living by faith, yes, living by faith, in Jesus above, trusting confiding in His great love, yes, in His great love. From all I'm safe in His sheltering arms, I'm living by faith and feel no alarm.
Father, we're really thankful this day and for all the many blessings that we so richly are blessed with. Father, we're mindful at this time the ones who have been sick, we ask that you comfort them. Father, we pray that everything we've done this day has been in complete accordance with thy will, and you'll accept our worship. Now as we depart from this place, we ask that you go with us, forgive us for our sins.
Aren't we compressing the lessons, compressing them on the computer? You know what I'm talking about? When we put them, where they're stored on the computer, you can put them like this. Well, no, what I'm talking about is when we do the streaming along, they used to compress down the server to where it was just in a little bitty. It may be a file, I don't know. So the guy was saying that our sermons in storage is taking up a whole lot of space. And so we need to compress it down. I know we used to do that. I know what was going on there. You know anything about that? Okay. We need to figure out that we're taking up a lot of computer space.
Yeah, we got ton of space.
All right, well,
We got ton of space.
all right.
That's the only problem. We might have a copy of CD or something.
Good job, Rob.
Glad you feel a little better. Good to see you, Mason. Staying out of trouble? I need to show you my phone.
That's so nice.
Oh, boy. I'm telling you. Let me walk out here and get
It's not on the same vicinity.
man, I started throwing in the garbage.
All right.
Yep, that's it. Right there. That's just a start. Oh, man. Let me go get the rest of it. Oh, man. Yeah.
I'm not carrying this.
What are you doing, man? I told you to put it on. I told you to put it on.
I think it's more. Although he was taking it out of one of those little plastic horses this morning. So you kick me in. I'll bet you look pretty.